you need to know that if you've never run this channel before, you have exactly 0 baselines. You don't know what it costs to get in front of your audience. You don't know what it costs to get engagement. You don't know what it costs to drive traffic. You don't know what your conversion rates are from this channel.
The LinkedIn Ads Masterclass, learnings from a team that spends over $12 million in ads each and every year. Welcome back to a fresh episode of BreakingB2B.com. I'm your host, Sam Dunning, founder at BreakingB2B.com. And if you haven't yet, why not join thousands of legends enjoying our weekday newsletter for unusual B2B marketing tips, SEO case studies, experiments, podcast updates, and more. Head over to BreakingB2B.com and hit that newsletter tab. So, joining me today, I've got the LinkedIn ads legend himself, JD Garcia. JD is the head of RevOps and strategy over at 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗁. How are we, sir?
We are fantastic, caffeinated, had a good breakfast, and ready to nerd out on the thing that I literally talk about every day, including weekends. LinkedIn ads.
There we go. There's no one better for the job. So we're going to be diving into a whole bunch in this episode. We're going to be talking about if you're ready for LinkedIn ads for your B2B company, which businesses are a fit, not a fit, what you should avoid, common mistakes you see time and again, a bit of a step-by-step of kind of where you should start and kind of thinking about setting up ads, creatives, and much, much more, and how you can start to measure success, scale it, and also a spicy one, company ads or branded ads versus thought leadership ads. So with that, we never beat around the bush on this show, JD. First and foremost, how can a B2B company tell if they are ready to start investing in LinkedIn ads?
Yeah, a good way to tell is if you have ever invested in the stock market and you've seen it start to drop, and you just have these strong hands where you don't sell and you can stick through it, you're usually going to be someone who can do well with LinkedIn ads. So it's a little bit of a joke, but like on a serious note, there's like the black and white kind of like objective things that you should have in order to like even start on LinkedIn. But I get asked this question a lot. It's like, which companies, succeed, which ones make it. And surprisingly, and I'll give a disclaimer here, surprisingly, the ones who have all the right stuff, let's say, like their audience is on LinkedIn, they can find them, they have product market fit, the deal size is pretty large, this is, an extra channel for them, they're already converting on another channel, so they have a good conversion process. Like if they have all that stuff and they still fail, it's usually a matter of either financial stamina or buy-in from leadership, because people come to LinkedIn and think like, oh, LinkedIn is going to act like, Google, like paid search. It's going to act like, kind of like outbound. And it's a very, very different tool. Like if you're trying to like hammer a nail and you're hitting it with a screwdriver, like you're going to think the screwdriver sucks. It's like you're using like the wrong tool. So you really can't compare it. So, when you're thinking about, should I do LinkedIn ads? Like maybe you follow Sam, you've seen me, you've seen other people talking about it, and you're at this point now where you're like, okay, we need to scale up. We're not really getting enough referrals. We're not really getting enough through our word of mouth. We're not really getting enough through our partners. Like there's only so much we can do to control that. We need to look at doing another channel. There's a few things that you need to look at doing first before you actually go ahead and make that step. And that's what I'll talk about. I kind of touched on it. Before that, Sam, anything you want to clarify really quickly on that part?
Always plenty I want to dive into. So one of the first things you said, make sure your ICP, make sure your ideal client profile is on LinkedIn. I suppose for most, in your experience, is there ever any B2B service companies, tech, SaaS companies you speak to where it's like, yeah, your ICP is not on LinkedIn?
Yeah, let's say like you're like in the ed tech space and you're targeting, let's say smaller companies, like they're not going to have the people, like let's say you do POS system for restaurants and you're like, well, it's B2B, I'm selling to restaurants and restaurants are selling to consumers. Yeah, but those restaurants are spending time where their clients are at. So they're really not on LinkedIn, especially if you're looking at some of the smaller types of companies. But there's a way to test this. So there's two ways to do this. One,
Okay.
you can use Sales Navigator if you have it. You know, God bless you if you do. You can replicate this and kind of in there. The second, which is free, would just be to use Campaign Manager. So if you don't have an ad account, create an ad account. It's free. LinkedIn's going to ask you for your credit card number. You don't have to give it to LinkedIn. Just go set up the account, go and create a campaign. So create whatever campaign you want. You just hit, create, select campaign, whatever you want, doesn't matter, and build out your ICP. So you say, I want CEOs, owner, founder, president, managing director. I want them for computer software or software development. And I want them for companies that are, 11 to 50 or 51 to 200 in headcount. I want them in, let's say, just the US. So you select permanent and you have kind of this audience. Now you're going to get a number on the top right-hand side. It says forecasted results. That number just tells you how many profiles that there are. But my brother-in-law was just telling me, was it yesterday? It was his birthday, that he has a LinkedIn account that he never actually set up, but it has an old job that he had before. So it's like LinkedIn's creating, I think, kind of like Indeed, it's like an aggregator. It's creating profiles for people where people maybe created a profile way back in the day. It's counting all of that. That number that doesn't actually represent like the actual people that are logging in. So what you can do just as like a proxy to see how active that audience is once you have your entire criteria, so you've used, and this, and this, and this, and this, you can then add a final one, which is called member traits. So you go to audience attributes, you go to member traits, and then you select frequent contributors. That frequent contributors will show you how much of that audience has been active on LinkedIn within the last 30 days. And that can be used as a good way to determine how active that audience is. My general rule of thumb is that audience should shrink to somewhere between 5 and 10% of what that total audience size is. And if you have that, then that's a decent enough audience to then justify getting something going.
Love it. Love the additional tip as well about activity in the last 30 days. That's a nice little add, because there's a lot of folks that just adds that extra bit of relevance. Are you tired of competitors ranking above you on Google, stealing traffic, leads, and mind share from dream clients every time they're searching for your services or offers on Google? At Breaking B2B, we fix that with our unusual approach to SEO, content marketing, and websites. We craft B2B SEO strategies and websites for revenue, not vanity. Head over to breakingb2b.com to check our results, pricing, or to book a call with me. One point you mentioned as well, so we said ICP on LinkedIn, you've dived into that nicely. I think you said you should have other channels running already.
Yes, before we get to that,
standpoint,
I'll touch on the kind of like product market fit. So a lot of this comes down to like expectations. So like you may ask yourself a question right now. You may be like, okay, this sounds good. I can do this. I can go do these things. How much money should I spend? Well, like it comes down to what your expectations are, right? Like if your expectations are to be, in the black within a month, I would just tell you not to even start. But your expectations will determine kind of like what your investment should look like. But you need to know that if you've never run this channel before, you have exactly 0 baselines. You don't know what it costs to get in front of your audience. You don't know what it costs to get engagement. You don't know what it costs to drive traffic. You don't know what your conversion rates are from this channel. Maybe you have other channels that you're doing. This is going to be different because you're stepping out in front of people that weren't already actively looking for a solution, unless you're using some type of, intent data. But I have different feelings about that. But you don't know. you don't actually know. So it needs to be treated differently. If you don't know who your audience is, and you don't really have product market fit, well, one of the things that you're going to try to validate is whether or not this audience really even wants what it is that you're selling. Now, maybe you're a startup, or maybe you're an existing company and you have a new product because you have some current, customers of yours that showed an interest in this. And you're like, maybe we could just create a whole new motion, for this. but you haven't tested it, that's going to be another obstacle for you as you're trying to blaze your way to, let's say, profitability. So ideally, an ideal scenario, you already have something that you know people want. If in a saturated market, like let's say you're doing, outsourced, IT services, or you're doing, recruitment, you're doing placements, like
Sure.
there's a fit for that. Now you just got to try to find your little, section of the market and why you're different in this kind of sea. If you're doing something new, like let's say you're doing on-prem AI for financial services and hospitals that are heavily regulated, so they really can't take advantage of AI because of all the security compliance. But now you're saying, hey, you don't actually have to do things in the cloud. You can do them on-prem. And this, makes it easier, and you're doing something that's novel. There's a bit of education that will need to take place there before you can get people to the point that they're ready to convert. So it's a little bit of a balance, but ideally you have something that's already been tested with the audience that you're going after. If not, buckle up. That's going to be part of the process.
Yeah, good point. I often, there's just like yourself, when we're talking to prospects that come to us for SEO for their B2B company or their SaaS, we're like you. We're not going to be the best fit for every company. There are times where, especially in SEO, which is completely different to LinkedIn, if someone goes to Google, it's best placed as a demand capture channel.
Yep.
So especially folks like you touched on there that are maybe in a category that's not as well known, might be a new type of offering, a new type of niche, a new type of service that people aren't necessarily searching for on Google. In that case, I'll usually tell them like SEO or paid search is probably not your best bet, because folks aren't searching directly for your offer, the problem you fix, or comparing you to other options because they don't know it exists. But in that scenario, if they are B2B prospects that are hanging out on LinkedIn, would there be better bet? Would their better option be to look at LinkedIn ads and kind of go down the education route, do you think?
Yeah. Here's a real simple truth. People can't buy from you if they don't even know you exist. So you have to step out in front of them. If there aren't people that are actively looking for your product, looking for your solution, or this kind of like the status quo has been the thing, like, hey, this is just kind of how it is. If there isn't already existing awareness, you have to go be the one that creates it. And this goes back to the thing I was talking about with, expectations. And, I call them like I call them like, a come to Jesus meeting, like we got to like come back down to reality here when it comes to kind of like expectations. Because and the expectation usually with whenever you're spending money is like you need some type of return, and ideally you need this, relatively quickly. And if that's the case, and you're thinking about LinkedIn as being that potential option, I wouldn't recommend LinkedIn ads for that. Most of the time. There are some use cases where that can make sense, but I wouldn't recommend LinkedIn for that most of the time, because LinkedIn, in my opinion, isn't necessarily like a pass-fail channel. It's like in the same way you might equivalent like marketing. Like if someone asks you, does marketing work or does it not work? Or like SEO, like does it work or does it not work? It's not really a question of like pass fail. It's like there's a scale, like there's a range here. So if you're thinking about LinkedIn ads and you're thinking about it as being a channel for you, I would challenge you to think about this as a long-term play and think about how can I turn LinkedIn ads into one of my strongest lead generation sources within the next 1 to 2 years. And when you have that mindset, it's easier to align your expectations and do the right things that will, get you to that point.
This is a tough one, I'd imagine. But gun to your head,
Yeah.
someone comes at you, a tough, no bullshit exec. JD, realistically, how long do we need to invest in LinkedIn ads before we're going to see something on the back end? Be it whatever our motion is, maybe a sign up, maybe a demo, maybe a sales call, depending on how we go to market. What's your usual response? You're not allowed to say it depends.
Pull the trigger. Sorry. I don't know if you've seen the new Deadpool movie, but it's basically like making an educated wish, at that point. Cause like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. There's a lot of like pressure put on marketing and like advertisers to like perform miracles, but Like we really have no control over this. Like the best thing that marketing can do is just help people think of your name whenever it comes a point in time where they need to try to solve like the problem that they have.
Mm.
Like there's going to be a catalyst. Like right now in the business, right, in my role, you know, we're relatively small. We're like, I don't know how many people we have now. It's like 80 something people, you know, in the organization right now. I have a lot of things I need to do. Like if you look at my ClickUp list of stuff, like I have a ton of projects and they have a hierarchy based on things that are like kind of important to me. There may be something that someone reaches out to me about on LinkedIn or something that I see that's one of those lower priorities and it may be interesting to me, but I'm not going to do anything about it right now because there's 15 other things that demand my attention this week. And that's where I think a lot of opportunity is kind of missed. And that's where I think kind of like the mindset needs to shift a little bit because you don't really have control over that. So I was kind of joking about pull the trigger, like, please don't, like, I'll give you an answer. Just don't kill me. You know, my default response is like usually 3 to 6 months because like I've done this enough times to just kind of like see the trend. But I qualify that with like milestones. So I know you're not here in Texas, Sam, like I am, right? But I use this analogy a lot. So I live in San Antonio and Texas is pretty large. Like I can drive 8 hours west to El Paso and I'm still in Texas. I can drive 3 hours east to Houston and I'm still in Texas. I can drive 5 hours south to South Padre Island. I'm in Texas. I can drive 5 hours north to Dallas and I'm still in Texas. I can go up further if I want to go to Amarillo, but it's really large. And like I use this analogy and it helps people kind of understand this, but think about your marketing as like you trying to drive, let's say, to Dallas. So I'm in San Antonio. If I want to drive to Dallas, I got to hop on the Interstate 35 and I have to go I-35 north for 5 hours to get to Dallas. Okay. My vehicle that's going to take me there, that vehicle working, that's my marketing efficiency. That's how well my car works. Me driving the right direction and going the right up the right highway, that is my marketing effectiveness. That's how effective I am at actually getting towards my destination. What happens a lot of times is if you don't have these things, like you don't know the ICP, you don't know what the right offer is, you don't really have a good conversion process. Like you can get people to your website, but can you get them to convert? Once they convert, can you actually turn them into pipeline? Can you turn them into revenue? Because none of this stuff matters, even if you do great marketing, if you can't actually turn it into money. But like these kind of things, like marketing efficiency side is like basically like your vehicle and how well you have things actually structured. If your tires are flat, if you don't have gas, if you don't have, you know, windshield wiper fluid, if you haven't changed your oil, good luck. Even if you hop on I-35 North to go to Dallas, you're not going to get there because you're highly inefficient. So there's an efficiency aspect of this that you need to have really kind of dialed in. The other side is the effectiveness side. So let's say your car has air in the tires, you're full on gas. I don't know, like, you know, maybe you're driving an EV, right? Like you're fully charged, whatever. Like you have all of the things and then you start driving south down to, you know, the beach. Like you can be highly efficient and go completely the opposite direction. And that's kind of the strategy piece of it. Like you need to make sure you're going the right way. My point about kind of the 3 to 6 months, when I'm talking about driving from San Antonio to Dallas, it's a 5-hour drive. And if there was no mile markers or anything telling you you're going the right way, it would be really difficult to continue driving because that's a, you know, quite a long drive. But if I'm driving and I pass Austin, okay, cool. If I'm driving and I start seeing the cities that are leading me up to Dallas, I feel better about hitting the right direction. So when I say 3 to 6 months, I mean 3 to 6 months to see the things that show me that I'm going the right direction. So I feel good about continuing to fill up my tank and keep driving.
Got it. Lovely, lovely analogy there, sir. So we'll get into tactics in a second and where B2B companies should actually get started or what they should consider before they even get started, which some of which you've covered nicely. Now, when it comes to your proposition, your offer, your software, your tool, is there a minimum, do you feel, that our ACV, that our average contract value should be in order to make LinkedIn ads efficient?
Yeah. This is a hard one because it depends on what you're selling and who you're selling it to. So I'll give you my answer and then I'll give you an answer that goes against that. So there's what's normally good, and then there are the exceptions. The things we should probably focus on most are just like what normally is good. So like ACV or LTV, should be, in my opinion, like $5,000 plus, $10,000 plus for it to be worth it. Otherwise, like the CPM costs, what it costs to get engagement, like the amount it costs to actually generate enough volume to then convert like a percentage of that, it makes it very, very hard to be profitable if you don't have something that's large enough to get people in. So that's my general kind of answer there. The exceptions. If you are a B2P, which is like business to prosumer, so it sits between like consumer and business, basically you're targeting, let's say, like high net worth individuals or affluent individuals at companies, where you're just targeting them for like kind of an individual offer. There are good plays with LinkedIn where you can have kind of a low ticket entry point, but then you have a good system to then upsell a portion of those on the back end. I'll give you an example of this. Let's say you do, let's say you do some type of coaching for, professionals, and you have kind of 3 different tiers. You have a, kind of do it yourself where it's, $100 or something. You kind of get this kit that kind of helps you. You have kind of like a group setting class where, this group, it's like a smaller group of people. You get some actual FaceTime, with the person. And then there's the kind of one-on-one, which is the really, really high ticket. The one-on-one time tends to be charged much, much higher because that's the hardest one to scale. Like even us, for example, for a little while, I tried doing just some strategy consulting for individuals, but it's just really hard to scale. Like you give someone an hour of your time, then like you're not doing other stuff that you can be doing. So like you have to have some of these other offers. But when I'm talking about this B2P play, the initial offer is a very low ticket. It's, 2-digit, 3-digit kind of offer. But then you have a system to then upsell those people and then turn them into a higher value client on the back end. So you need a really good system, but that's an option that can work. The last one that I'll talk about that's an exception is if you're targeting individuals inside of organizations that are easier to access, meaning they're lower cost, and you have a good system to get a champion inside of that org to then grow. So a good example of this would be as if like you have a really just really badass like SaaS freemium offer where like a sales rep, for example, could just get it and start trying it. And let's say they start getting success. So they up their license or they start actually spending more and more and more. If you have something like that and you have a really good retention and conversion rate, you can afford to spend more upfront to acquire these because you'll know that you'll make it up on the back end. But if you're hearing me, the thing that I'm saying for both of these is you need a really, really strong system on the back end to be able to grow that revenue. And if you don't have that, I wouldn't even consider spending money yet.
Yeah. That makes sense. And it almost feels a little bit like reading some of 𝗥𝗲𝗄𝗍𝗂's stuff around offers and lead magnets might even be of use, because I can imagine you've got it there, have you?
Sorry, I was going to say I got my book here and I can't even open my little cabinet to get it.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah, right here. Look at him. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
For Alex. Yeah, sorry.
For those listening in, he's just pulled out 𝗥𝗲𝗄𝗍𝗂's lead. What's it called? $1 million leads.
Yeah,
$100 million leads, something like that.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Cool, man. So we've walked through. Are you ready? And a bit of a checklist on that. We've walked through kind of the estimated timelines, expectations before going in, what you should consider around your contract value and all that good stuff. So let's dive in, and I'm sure there's plenty more we can uncover as we go. So in terms of if a company's thought, yeah, I checked some of the boxes, some of this sounds good, I think I'm ready. What is like step one of a process when you're going into LinkedIn ads? What's the very first thing you should do from a tactical standpoint?
Yep. So walk you through step by step. I'll say this a little bit quickly. Thank goodness this is recorded so you can go back and maybe you include a transcript and someone can just throw this into AI and whip up something easy for themselves. But this is exactly what you want to do. make sure you have a company page that's connected. You're a super admin on that company page, and make sure it's associated to your profile. A lot of times when people get started, I'll see that they have like the little gray building for the company because they didn't actually associate themselves, with the company. So like, make sure you have that first, you have that done. For your company page, make sure that you have some type of content cadence, because when you spend money to promote LinkedIn ads, one of the common things people do is they go look at your company page. Think about if you're going to go to a restaurant or something and you go look it up on Google or Yelp, what's the first thing you do? Go look at the reviews. Oh, this has what, 3 point something stars? I don't want to go there. Oh, this one has 4.2. Let's see what the actual reviews are. You go and you check it out. It's one of the many touches B2B prospects make. And it's something that people just don't even like think about, because I'm just, I'm going to run paid ads. But make sure your company page is cleaned up. Make sure you have some type of regular content cadence there. If you're posting personally, just take that and repurpose it there. Just have a presence, and ideally pin something at the top of your company page that has some type of like social proof or credibility, where people go to it. They're like, oh, this company got this award, or this person said something about them. It's a little bit like a trust play, and you want to make sure that people see that. Two, is make sure that your call to action button has UTM tracking on it. So you can actually see when you're looking at GA4, what traffic came from your company page as a direct click. And you can, kind of visualize that. Whenever I check out companies, like if I have conversations with prospects or, I'm doing an audit from somebody, I'll go look at that. And it's pretty interesting. I can use that as a way to determine how sophisticated of a marketer they are, just by kind of these, like, it's the details, right? Like it's the little attention to detail things. You may think, oh, this is kind of like silly. Aren't we supposed to be talking about LinkedIn ads? Why are you harping on about this? These little 1% things add up. It starts to stack. So these things are important. So good banner photo, make sure you have a good logo, high res, don't have anything on there that looks kind of tacky. Make sure that all your employees in your company are associated with it. You can put whatever you want. You could put, you have 10,000 plus employees, but if people go look and see how many people work there, and you have like 3 people, but you put, 11 to 50 as your head count, like people are going to look at that and think like, okay, these guys are not, really telling the truth. So do these things. Once you've done that, go create your ad account. Like I said, it's free. It's easy to do. Create your ad account. If you're going to run ads, yes, add your credit card and debit card. Depending on what you spend, LinkedIn's going to charge you either every day, every other day, just depending on how much you spend on there. But add your credit card, debit card on there. And then the very, 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 very first thing you need to do is you need to go and get the LinkedIn Pixel, and you need to install that in the global footer of your website. You need to do that immediately. So you do that right away. And then your step 2 immediately after you do that is you go into LinkedIn, you go to audiences, you create an audience. You want to create a matched audience, not a predictive audience. You want to create a matched audience, and you're going to create a matched audience for website visitors. And you're going to create 3 of them. You're going to create 180 days, 90 days, and then 30 days. Those are the 3 kind of standard audiences that you want. Step 3, immediately after you do that, is inside of your default campaign group, you're going to go create just like a dummy campaign. So you're going to create a dummy campaign. It doesn't matter what you have for targeting. It doesn't matter what you have, in there, objective, like none of that stuff matters. Leave all the default settings in there. You're going to add those 3 audiences that you created. You're going to take a company page post and use that as the, post. You don't have to create an ad, or you can use their little AI tool to create it, an ad. Whatever you want to do, just create an ad, launch that campaign, and then immediately pause that campaign. The reason why I'm telling you to do this is because your website audience data is one of the most important retargeting audiences that you can have for your campaigns, because you can qualify that website traffic with LinkedIn's filters. But the sad part about this particular audience is that it is not retroactive. So let's say you follow step 1, you follow step 2, or maybe just follow step 1. But if you don't create those audiences, and if you don't have those audiences tied to some type of campaign, it doesn't matter if you have the pixel installed, you're not going to be able to use those audiences. And you really want to use your website traffic. Now, you may even be saying, well, I don't really get a lot of website traffic. It doesn't matter. You want to make sure that you have that. And by parking those inside of a pause campaign, it will keep those audiences active for a little bit longer for when you're actually ready to use them. So those are the 3 steps. I can talk a little bit more, but I'm going to take a pause really quick.
Love it. So few interesting things. Like you say, some of these are just stuff that I might forget. I might not necessarily think about as a non-LinkedIn ads pro, but I like the stuff just around the company page. Like you say, essentially make sure the presence looks decent, looks solid, looks professional. Have some social proof, have some recent content rolling there. Don't bullshit around that you've got 10,000 staff and then someone looks at it and it's just you and your brother.
Yep.
So yeah, that'll make sense. UTM link on the CTA, and then getting that tracking with the LinkedIn pixel on your website. Budget should probably go on to this, but we didn't touch on it earlier. Is there a minimum expectation that you should have as a minimum ad spend that you should assign to LinkedIn ads just to make it worthwhile?
Yeah. This depends on, again, I'll keep tying this back to expectations because like this is the biggest variable here. It's like, what are you expecting LinkedIn to do? Now, I've done a few audits for people where they're just trying to test out kind of like this thought leadership content. So they'll, have a post that they, have, and they'll do like a lifetime budget, and they'll spend like, 500 or 1,500 just to kind of test and see like what it actually gets. And then usually what the sad part is, and this kind of goes into mistakes. I'm gonna do a little bit of a tangent here,
Sure.
but it's really relevant. Is you need to make sure that the money you're spending on LinkedIn is getting the data that you need. And that starts with making sure that you do all of the technical things right. So for example, when you build a campaign, if you're using a thought leadership post and you're going to do this as kind of like your initial test, technically the LinkedIn minimum ad spend is roughly about $300 a month because they have a $10 a day minimum ad spend. So at a minimum, if you keep that running for the entire month, it's, $300. If you want to run it for a day, then it's, $10. But depending on what your expectations are and how much budget you have to put here, like I think, $500 to $1,000, if you're just kind of dipping your, little toes in the water to see what's there, I think that's fine. I'll talk a little bit about the thought leadership and about this test, because if you're hearing this right now and you're somebody that, again, like this is resonating with, and you're like, well, yeah, I actually want to try this. This sounds interesting. Sure, I can do those steps. That makes sense. This seems, pretty straightforward. The number one mistake I see people make that haven't been in LinkedIn before is they leave all of the default settings. And I know that this has been just like touched on so many times, but it bears repeating. You need to turn off audience expansion. So when you go into your campaign, you select your objective. I'm going to use thought leadership as an example. You can only select brand awareness or engagement as your objective if you're selecting a thought leadership content, which means you're promoting a personal post from an individual at the company. You can only select those two objectives. So let's say you select brand awareness as an example. Well, with brand awareness, you're not going to be able, it's going to be harder to keep it at that $10 a day because it's a CPM bid, but we won't get into that. The first thing you want to make sure you do when you do your audiences is you want to make sure that you change the location to permanent. So it defaults to recent or permanent. Change that to permanent, because what people will do is they will create an account and they're in another country, and then they will change themselves to be like in New York or somewhere in the US. So, it's advantageous for them, and we don't want to target those people. So make sure you change that to permanent. And then when you go through and you select your targeting criteria, make sure you use and not or. So many times when I've audited accounts, I go in and I'm like, okay, let's start with this one that spent, I don't know, $2,500. And then you open it up and the audience size is like 20 million people. I'm like, who did this? Like no one looked at that and thought, targeting, a tenth of the population of the US. Like that sounds good, So just make sure that you select and when you're picking your criteria. So job title and company size and industry and, whatever else you want to use. If you're using skills, you might try to order that. Or if you're using groups, you might try to order that depending on the audience size. But a decent audience size, and this is one of the LinkedIn recommendations that I think is valid, is around 50,000. Now, your audience size is your audience size. So don't take that as a rule that it needs to be 50,000. If you're doing like an ABM motion, or let's say you only work with, ServiceNow customers because, you're one of the partners and it's actually only, a couple of thousand companies that you can focus in on, like who cares? Don't worry about that number. But if you're not, and you have this pretty wide universe, then you do want to kind of narrow that down a little bit. 50,000 is a decent amount. You can go up, 100,000, 150, 200. Once you go higher than that, like you probably should look at segmenting, or you probably should try to trim that down a little bit more. Separate conversation. But make sure you and everything. And then the two things you need to make sure you do right below the audience criteria, there's a little button that says enable audience expansion. It's checked. Uncheck that box. LinkedIn is going to throw a tantrum. They're going to tell you, no, please don't do this. You'll get, so many more clicks. You'll get all this other stuff. Yeah, because it's targeting people that in no way, shape, or form resemble anything like you put in for your actual targeting criteria. So turn that off. And then right below that, there's a little box that has the placements. It used to be that box was just exposed. Now you have to actually click to go ahead and drop that down, and you want to turn off the LinkedIn Ads Audience Network. Now, the LinkedIn Ads Audience Network, which I've used kind of sparingly here and there where it made sense, and there are some use cases for it, but it's very rare. But what it does is it pushes your content off of LinkedIn into its like third-party network of sites. And if you don't believe me and you want to run a test on this, create a campaign that has LinkedIn Audience Network on, LinkedIn Audience Network off. For your LinkedIn Audience Network on campaign, use different UTM codes, and then go look at the website behavior in GA4, and there will be a stark difference between traffic that was generated from LinkedIn and then traffic that came from, the audience network. But just trust me on this, please. Just don't do it. So you've done that. So your audience is good. Audience suspension off. Your audience network is off. Now you get down to bidding. For thought leadership content, you can just start with max delivery. Now, maybe you were expecting like some, really tactical, super cool trick for this, but there really isn't. For thought leadership campaigns, assuming the content's actually good, you can just do max delivery and you'll get really like good cost per click, really good CTR. So like do that. This is like the first page of when you're actually creating your audience. Please, please, please don't ever follow any of the shortcuts that are available. If there's the like AI Accelerate, which will help you build campaigns faster. But like, just know, like if you go to, the grocery store versus going to a convenience store, you always pay more at the convenience store because you're paying for convenience. Same thing. You're paying for convenience, and you do not want to do this when it comes to your marketing budget. So just bite the bullet, go through the actual process, build it out yourself. But that's the first page. The second page is the actual selecting the content. But quick pause, Sam, anything you think we should clarify?
Yeah, you've covered a lot of ground. So the one thing I think a lot of it was self-explanatory and helpful around the technical side of things and mistakes to avoid. Thought leadership ads versus company ads. Where should we start? Give us a quick snapshot for anyone that's maybe heard of thought leadership ads and perhaps isn't sure of the difference as well.
Yeah. So thought leadership ads are going to be basically content that you post or someone from your organization posts on their profile. Now, it's not exclusive to that. You can actually use content from people outside of your company, but that would be a separate conversation. In the interest of keeping things simple, we just talk about content published from thought leaders within your company. So one of like the superpowers of LinkedIn, at least that we found, is actually combining a organic presence and content strategy with paid ads. And it is very, very powerful. The most calories you'll burn with organic content on LinkedIn is the actual time to go and then create the content. But if you're like a successful business, you're talking to clients, you have a pretty strong, product, there's stuff that you want to say, and there's people that want to actually hear that. So if you're posting that content on your LinkedIn account, and if you're just using the native analytics tools that can give you some information. I like using Shield app, which is a content tool. It's like $15 a month. It'll allow you to kind of tag different pieces of content and kind of see the analytics, just for, all your posts over a certain time period. But the thing you want to think about when it comes to pairing that with LinkedIn is the two words. So there's reach and there's relevance. So reach is like, I have a post that has 800 something reactions because I talk about how I got fired, from this job I was at for 5 years, and how I learned to, always work on myself and prioritize myself. And that got a lot of, reactions, but no leads from that. It just, it was relevant to a lot of people, or it was interesting to a lot of people. But the stuff that I get, DMs on are things that are like really, really specific. So I did a post think it was last week, where I talked about 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗁𝗲, which is the conversion API, which is relatively new with LinkedIn, where you can either connect a static, let's say CSV list, or connect your CRM using some type of middleware like, Zapier. And you can basically, not using cookies, get better conversion data that you can use as signals to figure out what in your marketing is actually working. But that post got like, I don't know, 13 or 14 reactions. Like, it got nothing. But then I got like 2 DMs, from that. So when you're thinking about thought leadership content, you want to think about the stuff that results in organic leads on LinkedIn. And that's the stuff you want to promote. So, the company page content, so company ads versus thought leadership ads. Company ads, you can use pretty much any objective. Thought leadership ads, you can only use brand awareness and engagement objectives. But here's the thing that you need to keep in mind. This isn't like this one works and this one doesn't. They're all different pieces of the puzzle here. They're all different pieces of the journey. It's like going to the gym and you're like, is it better to work out, arms or legs? It's like, I mean, both, right? Definitely don't skip leg day.
Always on.
Yeah.
Every day is upper body day, right?
Every day is bench. Bench and then pants, right? And sweatpants. But like, you need to do both. Like you need to do both. So here's the thing I'll tell you about this. And I see this mistake happen, and I will save you some heartache and some frustration. Do not put thought leadership ads and company page posts, because you can boost company page posts. Do not put those in the same campaign. Why? Thought leadership ads are still kind of like in a bit of a honeymoon phase. Although I'd argue, at least for like the early adopters and the people that are super active on LinkedIn, it's starting to get, outside of that phase. But right now it still looks pretty native. When you run a thought leadership post and you see a person, the only way you're going to know that it's actually a promoted post is like right below the person's name, it'll say promoted by the actual company. But if you're not really paying attention, it looks and feels like just a regular organic post. And usually these posts have quite a bit of engagement, which is one of the reasons why you decided to take it and run it in the first place. And people tend to interact with these posts at a much higher rate than company posts. And the same is true for organic content. Think about organic content. Like, what does better, when you post from your personal page or when you post from your company page? It's always going to favor the individual. And the same is true with paid ads. And if you combine those into one campaign, you are going to run the risk of the budget being cannibalized by your thought leadership content and your company ads getting zero love whatsoever. Now, maybe you're clever. Maybe you've done a little bit of LinkedIn ads, and maybe you're thinking to yourself, well, JD, isn't there an option inside of the creative page when you're building the campaign? Isn't there an option for me to go in there and select rotate ads evenly? And if I selected that, wouldn't it just evenly distribute all of those ads to my audience? Yes and no. So how rotate ads evenly works is it basically will enter each one of those ads into the auction. And then that ad may or may not win the bid in that auction to even be shown to an individual. So even though you select rotate ads evenly, what it means is it's going to rotate them in the actual auction, but it doesn't mean that they're going to win every single time. So you need to be careful about how you're doing this, especially now that we have less visibility. So I'm gonna rant a bit more here, but this is important. There used to be something that you could see with your campaigns called a campaign quality score. If you've done paid search, if you've done pretty much anything, there's basically like a health score that tells you how the platform is rating you. And how LinkedIn works is that campaign quality score is a scale from 1 to 10. And what LinkedIn will do is it will multiply your bid amount by that quality score, and then that's what gets used in the auction. So let's say I am just a terrible, marketer. The audience I have isn't like, super dialed in. The content that I'm using is like so broad. Like my audience is small business owners on planet Earth, which is, everyone. And then let's say my messaging is just super, super broad. What LinkedIn's going to do, it's going to have a predictive CTR. It's going to estimate what the CTR is going to be, and it's going to use that to determine what my actual quality score is. And if I have a very, very low quality score, let's say it's like a 1, what's going to happen is when I bid, my $20 or $30 for a click, which I would never do, but remember, I'm a terrible marketer, it's going to multiply it by that, and that's going to be what I go to the auction with. Meanwhile, we have Sam here, who's like a beast at LinkedIn ads, and his campaign quality score is a 10. And Sam's gonna lowball. He's gonna bid $5 because he knows he's gonna win. His actual bid is $50, and now he beats me at the auction, even though I have a higher campaign quality score. So it's really important when you're thinking about running these ads and you're thinking about how you structure your campaigns, that you keep similar content together. The same is true with video content. And I'll promise I'll take a breath after this last one, if you're listening and if you're taking notes or if you pause or something, but I'll take a little break. Video content. If you're running video ads and you select, let's say like a video views objective, LinkedIn's going to optimize towards people that are most likely to consume the video. But if in that campaign, you have one video that is 10 seconds long, and then you have another one that's a minute, and then you have 3 that are 2 minutes long. Well, of course, LinkedIn's going to optimize towards the 10-second one because it's the one that's going to have the highest completion rate because it's just so short. So whenever you're running even video campaigns, you need to ensure that you keep the links relatively similar so that LinkedIn can actually do its job of optimizing the correct one. Now I'm going to take a breath.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Lots to go through. And like you said, encourage anyone that's even listening or watching to go back, because there's a lot to take notes on here, especially in the setup. Now, let's go a little bit deeper into thought leadership. Some of this stuff you touched on, JD, but does a company need to have one of their execs, one of their team members that's succeeding in organic LinkedIn? So they're getting some traction, and by traction, I mean they're getting some engagement on their posts, they're getting some comments from their target market, from their target ICP, in order to make thought leadership's ads viable?
Not necessarily. This depends on, do you like spending money? If you like spending money, then hit me up, because I can help you. But seriously, if you don't already have an established presence on LinkedIn and you're starting to post organic content, like buckle up. It's going to be quite a ride, because now you're going from San Antonio to Dallas and you're going on foot. Okay. And I don't know how long that's going to take, but it's definitely more than 5 hours. The challenge with the organic content and building that up is that you really don't have a ton of control over who's going to see the content. Now, yes, you can post content and you can use hashtags, or you can join groups and you can share, the content there. Or you can have an active kind of like outreach strategy where you're every week going and connecting with people that meet your ICP criteria, starting to nurture those relationships and expanding the number of people that would be exposed to your content. But all of this stuff is going to take time. My comment earlier about, you like spending money, you can accelerate the amount of signal and data you get back by promoting these posts and then figuring out what exactly works. So let's say you just started posting content a month ago, and, some of them get like 2 or 3 reactions. And then you're looking at, Sam's posts and you're like, this guy got like 30 something, and he's just, he's over here interviewing people who have no idea, what SEO is. I'm never going to get there. It takes time, and you don't need to dominate like a huge, swath of the market. You just need to find, your little slice of it and then go and dominate that. So first off, don't look at that. But if you have those kind of bits of reactions that you're getting initially, you can then take that content and accelerate the number of eyeballs that are seeing it, and then start to get feedback on what people are actually interested in. Now, if you're taking that strategy, my advice to you would be to do 2 things. One, select an engagement objective, because if you have an audience size that's relatively large, LinkedIn can optimize towards people that still meet your ICP criteria, but are more likely to engage with content because they've done it in the past. So I'd recommend doing that, and you will pick up reactions, you will pick up comments, you'll pick up some of these signals that you can then use to inform what next layer of organic content that you go and you produce. So that's one. Number 2 is kind of going back to like the little stuff, like make sure your profile is optimized, good profile photo, not something that you had cropped, at the Christmas party 3 years ago. Make sure you have a good banner photo. Like there's people out there, you can go look them up, that do profile optimizations, and they, charge you a couple $100. Like it's worth it. Like make that profile sexy, like have everything there, have links to different articles, have your team give you endorsements or recommendations. Make sure your about section is really dialed in. Like treat your profile like a landing page. Don't treat it like a profile that, maybe you're going to look for a job later. Like treat it like an actual landing page. Make sure that your call to action button that you have is something that's, valuable. Like for mine, I think I haven't checked it in a while. Maybe I'm being a little hypocritical here. I should go check that. But I think for mine, I'm using Linktree, and I just basically kind of link to different stuff that's on there. But you want to have something that's going to be valuable. So that's 2. I know I said 2, but there's actually a third one. The third one is you need to make sure that you actually engage with the people that are commenting on your stuff. So you'll get, depending on how you have your notification set up, you'll get 2 notifications. You'll get one if it's your organic content. So let's say you're the busy CEO, get someone else to be able to manage that for you, but you're going to get notifications of actual comments that pop up. You need to make sure you go respond, react, engage with those people. The second notifications you'll get will be actually from Campaign Manager if you have those notifications set up. So if you have somebody else on your team or someone from the company that sees those comments, on a daily or, every other day basis, make sure someone is going in and actually responding and engaging with those people, because people look at that. Same thing, like I mentioned earlier, for a restaurant. If you go and you look at the Google reviews and you go and look at the Yelp reviews and you see people like saying stuff, and there's no one from like the business that's refuting it or responding, like, hey, red flag, that kind of goes up. But if someone complained about something and then you see that the business responded and said, we're so sorry about that, we'll be able to take care of it, like you feel good. Like everybody's going to make mistakes. Like no one expects a company or individual to be perfect. But you need to have that presence. You need to respond. You need to engage. So you just need to make sure that you're monitoring that, the comments, and responding, to them. And I forgot why we're talking about this. You had a question, and then sorry.
Yeah, it's good stuff, right? I was asking about thought leadership ads, and I was asking if you should look for signs of success.
That's right.
From either yourself or perhaps your founder or your exec team from organic, and then look to amplify that with paid, if that makes sense. And it sounds like, long story short, it probably is, because it's going to be a lot tougher to grow that and scale that, although you could amplify it with paid, but then you're not necessarily sure if it's going to hit or not. Whereas if you've seen those signs of success in your organic posts, which is my plan actually with Breaking B2B, to start amplifying some of those posts that have done well on an organic standpoint, so whether that was like breakdowns or case studies or how-tos or tips or experiments, and then a bit like you folks do it Impactable with yourself and Justin, to look to start get that out to the ICP.
I got a good idea for you, and this can kind of like be for everybody too. But this is something that you can do, which would be pretty cool to do. So we know that like most people on LinkedIn are lurkers. Like they don't respond, they don't engage, they don't comment, they don't do like some of the stuff that we do, but they're on there. Like sometimes I'll talk to people and they're like, yeah, I've been following you, or I've been seeing your stuff. And I was like, I have never seen your name once, like on any of my stuff. How dare you, support me? Just kidding. But something that you can do is you can create an artificial content journey for people without needing them to actually do anything. So here's how you do it. Video is the easiest way to do it, but if you don't have video, you don't necessarily need to do that. But you run a short form video clip. Let's say it's 20, 30 seconds. If it's under 20 seconds, it's going to auto replay. So it increases the chance of you actually capturing data from people. If it's 30 seconds, it won't, but short video content. And then you build out your matched audience from that into your next layer. And you can run a single image thought leadership content in parallel with a video content. And basically you just waterfall people from one stage to the next by using the video views matched audience. You can do like 75% or something within the last 30 days if you want to keep it narrow. And you can basically just waterfall people every single month into a new layer of content without them actually needing to do anything at all. Like they simply just stop and scrolled and started watching, but you can build like this 3, 4, 5, 6 layer kind of, journey for people over a 6-month period where they see different content every single month as they move through your funnel. And it's not dependent on them actually clicking on anything. So you can do this for thought leadership content. And it's one of the reasons why thought leadership content has such a high CTR, even though it's not high intent. And that, what I mean by that is, for engagement and brand awareness campaigns, the chargeable clicks inside the LinkedIn dashboard are pretty much any interaction. So they breathe on the ad, like they're looking at it and they're breathing on it really hard. Like that's a chargeable click in LinkedIn's eyes, which means that if you are very, very heavy on thought leadership in your top of funnel campaigns, and let's say you're running in your middle of funnel campaigns, like stronger calls to action, you're going to have a very, very large audience. And most of that audience is going to be comprised of people that just clicked to see more, because it was a truncated post. It didn't mean that they were ready for a sales conversation or ready for a demo, but you're going to drown out the people that maybe have visited your website pricing page, that have taken like a stronger call to action. You're going to drown them out with all the people that have actually engaged with your ad content. So the strategy I'm talking about for you, Sam, right now, and for anybody that's interested in this, is having essentially kind of like a content journey for your kind of target audience that is just a thought leadership content. So it kind of operates in a bit of a silo, even though you can use those audiences for separate things if you want to build off ramps for them to actually, go and convert. But you can create this journey for people. And I've done this before as well. So you can use thought leadership content to do this. You can also break out 90-day audiences into 30-day buckets. So if I have something in my top of funnel campaign that is like very exciting, it's very sexy, it's very interesting, and I know that if people engage with it, that it's an indicator of high interest. What I can do is, instead of moving them down into just a bucket of 0 to 90-day, audiences, is I can build out a 0 to 30-day matched audience. I can build out a 0 to 60-day matched audience and exclude the 0 to 30-day, and then I can build a 0 to 90-day and then exclude the 0 to 60-day. So essentially, every single month that person is logging in, they're seeing content that's like in that different kind of stage of the funnel, again, without needing to actually do anything. The trade-off here, because everything's a trade-off, like no matter what you do, you're going to trade something off, is you do need to have a considerable amount of content, good content, to be able to pull this off. But once you do the initial build, the maintenance of it isn't too taxing.
I like it. That does sound useful for folks that are posting regularly.
Yes.
And like you said, have a backlog of content that they can tap into. Is when, to wrap things up with the last bit of tactical kind of walkthrough, when it comes to actually, and I guess there's a couple parts to this, when it comes to, I suppose, from a company perspective, thought leadership to one side, when it comes to building out those creatives and thinking about, I suppose, funnel stages, like how do you link, like grabbing, for example, we've installed our insights tag on our website, so we're collecting that data, and like you touched on some points there, maybe we've got some data that for folks that have been to our website a few times, been our pricing page, been on our demo page, whatever high intent page they are. How do we consider kind of building creative and matching it to those audience, and then on the flip side, matching to perhaps colder audiences considerations there?
Yeah. So you want to think about, well, how many, we got like 2 minutes, right? Jeez.
Well, we can go over, like, unless you've got a hard stop.
Maybe a little bit. Okay. So you want to think about your audiences and think about your segmentation in terms of what that audience is likely to do. So in my cold layer campaigns, what is my goal? Well, my goal is just to get them curious enough to take some type of action that acts as like a digital hand raise. I don't need them like, yeah, sure, I'd love for them to book a call, but I don't really need them to do that, because that's not usually how B2B prospects work. They're not just, fiddling their thumbs at their desk and see something and they're like, oh, this looks cool, let me sign up for a call. Like, most people are call adverse because they're trying to protect their time. So in your top of funnel campaigns, you're really just trying to pique their curiosity enough to get them to do something that allows you to funnel them into your next layer. In terms of the actual segmentation and segmenting people by, let's say, levels of intent, It's really going to depend on how large those audiences are. So the minimum audience size to be able to run a campaign on LinkedIn is 300 people. And maybe you're looking at your website analytics and you're saying, well, I get 1,000, visitors to my profile, every single month. Well, that's great, but LinkedIn's not going to be able to match all of those because it's cookie based. So you may have 1,000 website visitors, but when you look at your matched audience for that particular page, maybe there's only 400 people. And now you need to go in and add your ICP criteria, because just because they visited that page doesn't mean that they're the actual person that you want to talk to. So when you kind of get down to it, and what I found, even with companies that are pretty large and have quite a bit of traffic, is that it gets very, very difficult to do the level of, let's say, hyper segmentation that might make sense when you're thinking about, let's say, B2B, B2C, where it's like more, personalized. So it's a challenge to do that. So you need to consider your actual audience sizes when you're thinking about this, when you're thinking about doing this. And then in terms of the content, so when you have these high intent actions that are taking place, there should be different things happening at once to that audience. What I don't want to do is I don't want to hit someone over the head with lead gen forms, with a book a call ad over and over and over, and have that be just the only thing that they see. I want them to have a variety of content. So if I'm thinking about how I actually structure this in my middle of funnel campaigns, I want to help educate. I want to help build some trust. I want to help demonstrate kind of my, unique POV and show kind of our expertise. But then I also want that, bottom of funnel higher intent layer. So ideally those would run at the same time. And it's kind of like redlining your vehicle. Yeah, you can do that for a little bit, but if you do that for too much, you're going to burn out your engine. And in this case, you're going to damage the reputation of your brand. So if you have a bottom of funnel campaign that's more high intent, that does have that stronger CTA, typically what I recommend doing is using like a 0 to 30 day audience for that, so that people don't stay in there too long, because you're just going to, you're going to annoy them if you keep hitting them over the head with that too much. And that's not something actually that they want to do. So you need to kind of take that into consideration. But the biggest variable here, and this is the thing that you need to figure out for yourself, is you need to figure out what those audience sizes are, because that's going to help you determine what your campaign architecture looks like, and then what pieces of content you need to fill in those pieces.
One last thing, and then we'll wrap this up. Any recommendations when it comes to messaging or creative, or any mistakes that folks should avoid now they've got kind of the base of the tactics and the technicals?
Yeah. Keep in mind the device which your audience is actually consuming content. So most people consume or use LinkedIn on a mobile device. Now, during working hours, and you can test this, if you run text ad campaigns, which are desktop only, you run them, kind of 24 hours a day, you'll see that Monday through Friday, usually Tuesdays are like the highest day when people are at their computers. I don't know why, it's just how it is. And on LinkedIn, but most people are going to access LinkedIn from a mobile device. And not everybody is going to use the same font size that you use. Like I had LASIK, a few years ago. So like my screen's like super, like the font's, super tiny. But other people may not. Other people may use, larger font. So you want to just kind of bear that in mind. But the biggest thing with creative is that you want to make sure that your content looks good on their actual mobile device. So you should, this isn't like a silver bullet, like, hey, just do one simple hack and, LinkedIn, shareholders hate this one simple trick. Like this isn't a hack. But Square is usually a pretty good ad format. So 1200 by 1200, it looks good on mobile. It looks good on desktop. You should use a variety. So you can use horizontal, you can use vertical ads. You can have a little bit of a variety, but you want to keep that consideration. And then the other thing, which is really, really huge when it comes to creative, is you don't want text heavy ads. The goal of your creative content follows this exact order. Your image or your video needs to get people to stop scrolling. Let's use image, for example, because the image and video are a little bit different. Your image just needs to get people to stop scrolling. That's it. You need to capture their attention. They need to see that and think, and just kind of glance at that. There's, a number on there. There's something on there that catches their eye. Your intro text, which goes above the image, that needs to do the job of explaining more and then keeping that curiosity. Now you can do truncated if you want, where I think it's longer than 140 characters and they'll have see more. If you do that, then when people click on that, you will have retargeting data available, but it's not going to be as high intent as if somebody actually clicks to go to the website, which website visit objective is the one that allows you to make that distinction between matched audience creation. But that intro text, like that needs to do the heavy lifting for you. Like, again, image is important. And it's not like, what's more important, like, your legs or your heart or your lungs or your kidney, like each one serves a purpose. And in this case, they actually stack on top of each other, but the image needs to stop them. The intro text needs to keep them interested. They need to read that and it needs to nudge them. And then the headline, which is what goes next to the call to action button, that needs to go ahead and bring it on home. So you want to just have that same theme that carries on. And then for the CTA button, just use learn more. Don't use register. Don't use subscribe. Don't do request demo. If you're in contact with your LinkedIn rep, they can, give you some numbers behind this. But, when it comes from like CTR standpoint, all those other CTAs, even for like bottom of funnel stuff, all those other CTAs just dwarf in comparison to learn more. And I think it's because, people don't want to commit to something. So learn more seems like, oh, yeah, I'd like to learn more, not asking me to do anything, really. So use that as your CTA, and you'll be in good shape.
There we go. JD, appreciate the masterclass. Thanks for running through everything in such detail. And I appreciate the analogies. There's a lot there to nicely break down with the Texas and the vehicle and all that good stuff. So really appreciate the time. I'm sure folks listening or watching are going to have plenty of questions. So where is the best way for them to reach out or connect with yourself and the team at Impactable?
Yep. So my DMs are a hot mess. But you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I really hope one day there's a better sorting system than just selecting starred and sorting by that in LinkedIn. But you can find me on LinkedIn, JD Garcia. Hit me up. I have my profile set to open. So even if we're not connected, you can go ahead and shoot me a message. But I post a bit of content there, but that would be the best place to reach me.
Awesome, man. We'll put all of the links to the Impactable site, your LinkedIn profile below. And with that, thanks once again. So I really enjoyed the walkthrough.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
No worries, man. And as always, if you enjoyed today's episode, why not join thousands of B2B legends enjoying the newsletter? Head over to breakingb2b.com, hit that newsletter tab, and you're going to get unusual B2B marketing ideas, experiments, and fresh podcast releases in your inbox each and every weekday. And with that, thanks very much for listening or watching. We shall catch you on the next one. Cheers.